Hello and welcome back to my channel. This is Java with Ali and I am Ali. So today we're going to continue on with the JDBC stuff and I'm going to go through a few examples and then we're going to continue on with part 4, I think it is, we're at now, next week. So now we're going to just look at how we're going to add some things to our database as well, because we're going to adapt the database in order to query it and use two different classes this time. We're going to use PersonQueries and a person class. And then we're also going to use PersonMain to get to it, to query it. I've done a really rough one, so bear with me. If you want to look at using something like fxml, you can do that as well. I'll cover a little bit of that next week because we haven't covered it before, just so you can see some visuals, might make an application look a little bit better instead of outputting to the console. So I will actually open up my Sql Workbench. As you can see, I've added 2 new columns. How I did that, I had to alter table authors exactly the same way it's written there. It's case sensitive. Add email, which is capital E here, because when I go to my code, it also has to be written the exact same way as well. And it's a varchar. And then I've added also here, I've also added, you can see down here that I've also added address ID as an int. So when I go to look at these here, then I just have ID authors, first name, last name, address ID, and email. So now I have to go back to my program. And as I said, we've got several different programs today, so we're just going to have a look at the person queries first, then continue on next week. So 10-minute chunks, we're going to do this. So as per before, we have our private static final string for our URL. You can copy this from the connection in your MySQL. Remember, in your MySQL Workbench, remember that you have to turn on your server if you're using a Mac. So you do that by going to your settings first. Go into your settings, then you have to search for SQL and make sure your server's running before you can do any of this. Then look at your instance on your MySQL Workbench. You can right click and copy the URL with it as well. And this is your URL then is right here. It's your JDBC MySQL localhost 3306 and authors is the name of the table. Then we have our username and our password, which I've set to a regular one. Not that secure. It's okay though, because we're just doing it for demonstration purposes. And it's also stored locally on my machine, which is different to what you would be doing in industry anyway. But just for demonstration purposes, let's have a look at this. I've cleaned up some of the code a little bit so you can see the select statement as is. So we have select all from authors is the name of the table. All is your star here. Order by last name, first name. The way I've written last name and first name is the exact same way as it is here, with the capital N for name and last name as well. And then we have our select all here when we go down to person queries, which is our constructor. If you're not sure about constructors, I also have a video on constructors as well. Constructors are also the same name as your class. They've no output. Here it is when you construct, when you create a new instance of your object. This is the constructor that you call. It has no arguments at the moment. We just have our connection and it tries the connection, and then that is it so far. Now we have a list person method for get all people. Again, there's no arguments, and this is an overloaded method. So an overloaded method meaning the same name as a method, except it's got arguments in the next part, so in the next version of it. So down here we have also string and last name, and it also does something else. So we're just going to do a brief look over what we're covering, and then we're going to dive into a little bit more detail next week. So far we have try, result set, and we have to execute our query. It's an array list. And then we have our while, and it loops through each next one and then returns the results. And of course, we have our SQL exception as our catch and to print our stack trace. The same goes for the get all people here, which is our overloaded method, and it accepts a string last name, and then it tries to select by last name, and it sets the string 1 and then last name. So if we go up here, select by last name, and we're using something called prepare statement. So prepared statement creates a prepared statement object for sending a parameterized SQL statement to the database. So it's already an SQL statement is already with or without in parameters and can be pre-compiled. So it's already prepared, which is really nice. We use this by using the Java SQL prepared statement. So it's quite useful. So we have 1, 2, 3 different prepared statements. And then we have 1, 2, 3 different queries. So these strings are here, and they're passed through to the prepare statement method, which is part of connection, which is in which connection then is of connection type, which is Java SQL.connection. So connection session for a specific database, which we already specified as authors. Are you with me so far? So if we read it this way, like I always say, so we have our string that's going in. So select all statement is being passed through to prepare statement, which is a method which can pre-compile your SQL statement for you, and it's part of the connection class, let's say, within java.sql package, and we pass that in and we store it as a prepared statement type, then called select all. Same goes for select by last name and insert new person. So we take our queries and we pass our queries into our prepare statement and into connection class, so into our prepare statement method in collection class, and then store it as a prepared statement, so it's pre-compiled. So if we have a look, we have PersonQueries, which is our constructor, and we have get all people, and we also have get all people here, which is our overloaded method, which we just said. And we also have add person and then close the connection. So similar to the previous when we were talking about executor and executive services, we also had to close the connections once we started a session. So we also had to do that for databases. You have to open a session, close the session. So it's already there and then we close it. So if we go back up here now again to our list person get all people, so it's type person, which is the other class which we'll cover next week, and we pass through our last name. Our last name then is set the string as part of select by last name prepared statement. So and then we also catch it. We do another try, which is going to be result set, and we execute the query. And once we store the select all, once we pass through the select all, we assign it to result set. Here we're going to just, create a new list called results, and we're going to add our address ID, first name, last name, email into our results, and then return the results. And then once we do that, we're also going to have another method called public int add person, and that's going to be our first name, our last name, and our email. And I'm going to stop there because that's quite a lot already. So we're looking at prepared statements. First, we prepare the statement as part of the connection class. then we assign it to a string, and that string then is of type prepared. Here, if I just have a look here, prepared statement. Very good. Okay, so that's our prepared statement so far. They're going to be pre-compiled. Then next week we're going to continue on with person and then person main. We're going to all wrap it up into a nice big bow, and then that should be the end of our SQL stuff, and then we move on to a different topic. So thank you so much for watching, and please like, share and subscribe and comment below if you have any questions. Okay, thanks for watching. Bye, stay safe.